past 4 weeks, I have been living on the Flathead Reservation, immersing myself in Native American culture and life on the reservation. During my stay, I have learned about what it means to be Native American in today's society. Americans have a rich culture that is very much alive today despite popular belief. While on the reservation, I had 3 outcomes I was working towards. My first outcome was to volunteer in different schools on the reservation, to expose myself to different education alternatives, and see how the reservation runs academia. My second outcome was to learn about how the reservation is governed and the role played by the government system. Lastly, I wanted to immerse myself in their culture and way of life. To achieve my first goal, I went to 3 different schools on the reservation. The first school was a public K-12 school. This school was very similar to a traditional school you would see in any lower-income small town. The difference academically was it catered to the environment and racial and cultural difference by requiring elementary students to take Salish classes while offering it as a language elective for high school students, as well as required elementary students to take Native American Studies class. These differences helped to foster an understanding of the students' identity as Native Americans and their historical significance in this country. For being a public school that has to abide by certain laws of education, this school did a good job of making sure their students were well educated in their culture as well as having the opportunity to learn their language. The second school I worked at was a child care center at the SKC Tribal College. This school's mission was to foster cultural awareness of not only Native American culture, but of all cultures. They had culture circles where the kids were allowed to share about the different countries they have come from and the different traditions their families have. The SKC Child Care Center really hits on the core fundamental needs for preschoolers to be successful not only in school later on, but also successful when it comes to being diverse socially. The school was the Inkusum School, which is an all Salish language and immersion school. This school has a very unique approach to education that was focused around hands-on learning outside of the classroom and discussion-based classrooms. While I was at the school, we spent the day carving 20-foot teepee poles and then went on a hike looking for certain wild berries and roots. At this school, the students are well educated in their tribe's history and traditions as well as very competent in outdoor activities. For example, they go hunting during the hunting season and then come back and dry the meat outside. This school has had very positive outcome on the reservation because it has helped to bring back the language and making sure that the elders are able to pass down all the stories and traditions. Most of these students have gone on to do wonderful things while staying away from all the negative distractions such as drugs.
The best thing that ever happened to our reservation is to realize that our language needs to go on. We have had so much trouble in the past. A lot of our people lost their language because of schools, government schools, Catholic parishes, their schools, that kind of stripped them of the language. A lot of them were literally whipped because they spoke the language in these schools. And so they chose not to speak because they didn't want to be whipped. And when they got out of these schools, they just said, well, what's the use going back to the language?
I've taught in public schools, and I saw so many Indian kids they don't know who they are. You know, they don't know what it means to be Salish or Kootenai or Pondere or any, the other tribes that are around here. They don't know who they are. They don't know their history. And they would come to me, during times when, recess or whatever, and they would just ask. These are kids in public schools. They wanted to know. That's what our kids need. That's what our kids want. They want to know who they are. They need their language. They need their culture, and that's where I was as a kid. That was one thing that hurt me so much as a kid. The kids that are here figuring out who they are, where they've come from, where their families have come from, why things are the way they are now. They're learning their language. They're learning their culture, and through this, they're proud of themselves. They're proud of who they are and where they come from. They're able to survive in 2 worlds.
The reservation is governed by an elected council. Since it is a sovereignty, reservations have to provide their own legal systems for within the reservation grounds.
Law enforcement on our reservation consists of state-certified tribal officers. and non-tribal county, city, or state officers. They work together to keep us all safe. When someone reports a crime and the parties involved are non-Indian, the dispatcher calls non-tribal officers. But when the parties involved are Indian, the dispatcher sends tribal police. Sometimes the dispatcher doesn't know if the parties are Indian or non-Indian, so they ask for the nearest police to respond. If tribal officers respond to the incident with a non-tribal offender, they can put the offender into custody and hold him or her until a county, city, or state officer arrives. This works the other way too. If it's a traffic situation and a non-Indian officer can't respond in a timely manner, he or she can give permission to tribal police to arrest a person. Tribal police also do investigations in felony cases and turn the information over to the court handling the case, whether it is tribal or non-tribal. So Indians and non-Indians alike should simply obey the law. A per capita disbursement is a sum of money distributed to a group of people. A common misperception is that per capita disbursements to tribal members come from the federal or state government. In reality, the disbursements are individual tribal members' share of any profits made by the tribes and their many business ventures. Most of the money comes from the leasing of the Kerr Dam. The money from this lease of the dam to power companies enables the tribes to disperse $8 million annually, the tribe's largest single expenditure. At the Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribes, each of the 7,200 tribal members aged 18 and older get a $400 payment 3 times a year in winter, spring, and summer. For tribal members who are minors, half the money is placed into an individual Indian monies account until they are legal adults. Parents or guardians receive the other $200. Tribes and states with different gaming regulations sometimes have large casinos that allow for much higher per capita payments. But while it is true that a number of tribal programs receive federal and state funding, none of this money is distributed by per capita payments to individual tribal members.
Most reservations are not as lucky as the Flathead Reservation to have such strong leaders who have really looked out for the tribe's best interest. The Flathead Council has bought back most of the land they initially had, as well as recently took control of the dam on the lake, which has now given them control over their own water system. Currently, the council is debating whether or not to build a casino on the reservation. This situation is extremely fragile, since casinos can attract negative outcomes, but also has the potential to bring in more money for the tribe. Most tribe members are against the idea of building a casino for reasons that it will create more problems and will end up being a waste of their money since it's not a very touristic area. Right now, a major issue facing the reservation is crystal meth. They have noted that they are finding less and less meth houses, which at one point were a major concern, costing the tribe thousands of dollars in home damages. Culturally, I have learned so much about being on the reservation. Native Americans have such a tight-knit community, and I have seen that everywhere I worked and with the people I was able to meet. My first cultural experience was the Bitterroot Dig. The Salish tribe used to live off bitterroot during the winters, and it has been a long tradition that in late April, everyone gathers together and goes bitterroot hunting, and then goes back to the longhouse and has a huge feast together. Before we started the hunt, we all gathered, and the elders sang a song in Salish to bless the hunt, and then a teenage girl dug out the first bitterroot of the season. They choose a different teenage girl every year because it signifies the passing down of traditions. Natives usually eat the bitterroot in soup or they roast them in salt. My next major cultural experience was being able to go to the SKC powwow, where I got to see the beautiful dancers dancing in very traditional ways as well as wearing very traditional dress. Another big experience I had was going to the river honoring. This event is a time where the tribe comes together to honor all that the river has done for them in providing and creating life. For Native Americans, it is really important to honor and give back to the earth because to them, nature and land is very sacred and deserves the utmost respect. I saw this respect everywhere I went. At the Inkusum school, the teachers all left tobacco leaves on the ground where we took berries and roots because they believe if you are taking something from the ground, you must always leave something that came from the ground. As well as having these experiences, I was able to take cultural classes at the tribal college. That allowed me to make traditional tools, and learn beading and learn about traditional Native foods. Many believe Native American culture is dying, but that is far from the truth. These people have such a passion and pride for their heritage that no matter the struggles, they will continue to fight to keep it alive despite all obstacles. These past 4 weeks have not only been extremely educational, but also helped prepare me for what lies ahead and instilling qualities I will need later on in my life. Being around a different race and culture than your own opened my mind to being more accepting to others and the benefits of being in a diverse area. Being on my own for 4 weeks taught me how to be independent and self-advocate, 2 skills that will benefit me while in college. There is such a strong sense of community among these people, which helped me to see you do not need all the material stuff that is so valued on the North Shore to be happy. You just need to surround yourself by sincere people who value you for you. I could not be happy with my experience. I was able to do everything I wanted while meeting amazing people along the way that have changed me for the better. Thank you, New Trier, for allowing me to have the opportunity to broaden my horizons.